Welcome back to this course on HR analytics, and we are in level 3 organization-wide alignment is in HR analytics, and the topic today we're going to see is about bias in prediction. So we are going to see this particular topic. And see, bias is actually we need to understand a little bit about the concept of bias with respect to HR analytics domain. So bias is actually something which is a very systematic error, which is actually the systematic error in the system because of various reasons, and which is actually ultimately leading to very wrong outcomes and wrong decision making, ultimately affecting the decision making. So it's a systematic error which is actually creeped into the system because of various reasons, and because of that, it is affecting the accuracy of the outcomes, which is ultimately affecting the decision making. It is like that you are actually taking a wrong decision, thinking that the results of the outcome is correct. So that is actually the biases in with respect to prediction is a very important topic we're going to see about. It is a very significant risk because it can create a lot of unwanted repercussions with respect to the businesses concerned, and leading to a lot of legal and ethical issues are also involved with respect to bias in prediction. And this is an introduction about HR analytics. We've already seen what is HR analytics, but just a quick recap of what is HR analytics. It's basically a mathematical model. It's a data-driven approach where, with respect to various areas of HR, are being optimized through data and through empirical insights. For example, if we talk about performance management, recruitment, and talent management and retention. So improved outcomes and example turnover. For example, if we talk about one of the application of turnover is actually predictive models. This HR analytics predictive models is one of the one of the major model in HR analytics. They identify what is the possibility of a particular person leaving an organization to a fair degree of accuracy, and thereby create a lot of options for organizations to have backup plans in terms of retention strategies or replacement strategies. And we have already seen this, how predictive HR analytics is actually improved a lot of areas. Decision making is significantly enhanced, no doubt about that. And the time, for example, if you talk about increasing the efficiency, factors like time to hire actually are reduced by 15 to 20%. There is a reduction in the time. And the impact, we have seen that organizations using HR analytics actually have a higher stock returns. And also, the very important part is the identification of the trends and patterns is very important because this gives a lot of these needs to be analyzed, and which can go into various areas of the organization like product development, increasing the HR policies. All this stuff actually are actually facilitated through predictive HR analytics. And now let us go back to the bias part of this HR analytics. And these are some of the impact of this bias. There is a very systematic discrimination. This is actually one of the type where the algorithm itself, there are a lot of unwanted assumptions made by the programmers while developing itself. So what happens, it's actually discriminating. It's discriminating and perpetuates inequalities actually. So what happens, it leads to wrong decision making, which actually affects actually the entire society as a whole. And as I told you, the discriminatory outcomes, for example, if you talk about hiring, promotion, and compensation, this can significantly affect it. And these are some of the points here. And these are some of the how this bias is creeping up into this. We talk about bias. So these are how the historical bias, where the training data itself actually is biased. And representation bias, actually the required amount of representation is not there in the training data set, and that actually gets carried over when you actually do a live modeling. And measurement bias is also there when we actually collect the data, and the data is actually not really objective and it is biased. So bias can creep in through these various sort of reasons. And also continuing with that, sources of biases, algorithm design flaws, which you've already told you that because programmers won't make unwanted and unconscious assumptions into the algorithms. And feature selection bias is also one of the type where For example, if you talk about zip codes, relating some zip codes correlating with the race. So that is actually a feature selection bias, unwanted correlative features. And model inequalities actually a lot of factors are not being fairly represented in the model, and inadequate variables are actually used in the prediction model. And the cost of bias is definitely huge. And these are some of the areas where there's an effect. Definitely, there's a huge legal risk. And we have seen many lawsuits currently in across many organizations across the globe. And reputational damage, this is one of the significant impact of the bias on a business, where there is a loss of trust in the organization, there is a public backlash, and it's very difficult. And ultimately, what happens is very difficult to attract top talent into the organization. And innovation definitely has an impact when there is a bias. Because if you talk about as a team, it needs to be diverse and heterogeneous rather than a homogeneous teams. So we already seen with respect to data, heterogeneous teams are much better when compared to innovation than compared to homogeneous teams. And ethical implication, and this actually created a cultures of inequality within the workplace. And these are some of the techniques where we can measure, detect, and measure bias. So fairness metrics, we have to ensure that there is a lot of segment are selected across the various groups. And also we're going to analyze the true positive and false positive rates across groups. So this is actually some of the ways where you can detect and measure bias. And obviously auditing and validation is also very, very important part of all this. This actually helps uncover hidden biases within an organization. And this is actually some of the areas where strategies for improving the reducing the bias and mitigating the bias. So going to be very, very clearly transparent on the working of the algorithms and also the limitations of the algorithms. And there is and diversity is very important. The organization has to ensure there is a lot of diversity in terms of HR, AI design, and deployment. And the human oversight cannot be overlooked. Actually, AI systems can only augment the human judgment, and is very, very important. And AI has to augment all this stuff. And algorithm debiasing. Implement this technique. There's a technique called fairness aware machine learning technique during the training of the data set itself. And data pre-processing is very important, the cleaning of the data, and balancing and weightage is given to the various factors also has to be re-weighted, and oversampling and underrepresented. So net, what happens, building an ethical future for HR analytics is very, very important, and it's a very critical challenge to the organization is facing. And these are some of the final takeaways which talk about bias in with respect to HR analytics domain. So thank you very much for the patient listening, and look forward to you on the next session.